Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most awesomest and the most coolest kings that ever touched planet Earth, which was Charlemagne. If you guys don't know who Charlemagne is, that's why you're here. But before we get into the video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because these videos actually take a really long time to make. Also, we're about to hit 50,000 subscribers. So, just please like, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's talk about one of the most awesomest kings to ever touch planet Earth, Charlemagne. So, a baby was born in 748. Yep, you got it, 748. This man is a grandpa. But there was a baby born in the year 748 that went by the name of Charlemagne. Now, Charlemagne, translated, means Charles the Great, and no one knew how great this boy was actually going to be. Now, his daddy was named Pepin the Short. He was short, but he was strong. This dude could pack a punch. And he ruled over a group of people named the Franks. Now, the Franks were a bunch of warriors that loved to fight. Pepin ruled a big chunk of land, which is now known to be France and Germany. But Pepin actually wanted more, and he planned on getting it. So this man was just like he was so cool. Like, I'm not even kidding. And the Pope was the leader of the church. Now, the Pope was actually having a problem with some people named Lombards. Yeah, Lombards. He was having trouble with these people named Lombards, and they were causing trouble, and he called Pepin for help. So basically, bro just didn't want to put up with it, so he's just like, yo, Pepin, help me out, cuz I need your help. And Pepin didn't only whoop them up. He didn't only do that. He put disrespect on their name. He whooped them so bad their mamas would be proud. Bro, I'm not even kidding. Bro, the Pope was actually so happy with this dude that he gave him a special blessing. And now Pepin wasn't only like an army general anymore. He was now God's chosen king. And Charlemagne actually grew up watching Pepin, his dad, learning how to fight, rule, and do all this stuff. And also, Charlemagne grew up to learn how to fight, whoop people's butts, ride a horse, the whole shebang. And one day, Pepin, Charlemagne's dad, had told him a saying, a king must be wise, a king must know how to rule, and a king must know when to protect his people. And then, when Charlemagne had turned 26 years old, Pepin was put out to pasture. Not put out to pasture, what? He had passed away. I can't actually say the real thing because YouTube will demonetize this video. But dad passed away, and he knew he had to rule, but there was a problem. Now, the kingdom had split into two, and you gotta think, Pepin had two sons, Charlemagne, the one we're talking about, and Carloman, his other son. Charlemagne, awesome and cool. Carloman, grumpy and jealous. And Carloman basically just didn't want to help his brother at all. He thought he was the one that should rule alone with the kingdom. And when Charlemagne would go to war with people, he just wouldn't help. Like, he'd just be like, okay, bye, I guess. And as you could imagine, Charlemagne, your boy was upset. Like, he got so mad. Like, it wasn't even funny. Like, he thought his brother had betrayed him. So, Charlemagne, he'd get mad. He's like, I'm about to step on bro. And then one day, Carloman just, kicks the bucket. And no one knew why. Yeah, it kind of sounds like Charlemagne smoked him. I'm not kidding. It does sound like it. It does sound like it, no? And now, Charlemagne had the entire kingdom to himself, meaning he was the ruler of all of it. Charlemagne was big stepping. I don't know if I think he might have smoked his brother. Because it says that, Carloman just naturally, passed away. A lot of people thought he got sick. And a lot of people thought he just, passed away of natural causes. We all know Charlemagne smoked them. We ain't gonna lie, for real. So how are you guys liking the educational video so far? I know it's a withdrawal from my, everyday content, but it's whatever. But being a new king by himself wasn't enough to prove to his people that he was him. So if he wanted to win the support of his people, he had to prove that he was stronger, smarter, and he could lead them better. He wanted a big empire, a powerful army. He wanted a kingdom that was ruled by God's laws, and he wanted people to remember him forever. I mean, I'm not saying that, we haven't forgot about him. That fourth day, he didn't want anybody to forget about him. He kind of achieved that, because you gotta think, this happened in, AD, bro. And here we are, here a teenager is in 2024 talking about him. Wow, the crazy. And, bro, you gotta think, this man's ops were everywhere. He could step out of his kingdom, there'd be an op. Boom. Hey, you'd be an op. Which the following were the Lombards in Italy, the Saxons in Germany, the Moors in Spain, and the Avars in the East. As you could already guess, this man had ops left and right, and he had to deal with them one way or another. Then the Pope, the one I had mentioned previously in the story, like, the Lombards had been attacking him again, so he goes up to Charlemagne, and he's like, yo, I need help. And Charlemagne, he sees this as a great opportunity, so he's like, bet, I'm finna, if I step on these people, they're gonna think I'm the greatest king ever. So bro starts stepping to Italy, bruh. And the Lombards had a big fortress called Pavia. That's what it was called. And Charlemagne surrounds the entire place, and he stops food from getting in, so they're slowly starving. And you gotta think, Charlemagne is just stalking their fortress. Like, you gotta think, the Lombards were tired, hungry, and scared, because they had been in there at this time, they're in there for months. Like, there's no way they're getting out. So they're just there, right? Charlemagne's stalking the entire place, and then sooner or later, the Lombards surrender. Now, instead of defeating them wasn't enough for Charlemagne. But listen how bad this dude is. Listen how cool he is. He straight up ran up on the Lombards, whacked them, and not only did he do that, he took over their empire. He didn't take over it. Well, you might as well took over their empire. Bro steps on them and then proceeds to become the king of them. Like, okay, bro. Imagine imagine someone coming into your house, whooping your dad, and then claiming to be your new dad. That's what Charlemagne did. But think about that, but with an entire group of people. So now, Charlemagne wasn't the only ruler of Franks, he was also ruler of the Lombards. So now he was the ruler of two kingdoms. And even though Charlemagne was now the king of the Lombards and the king of the Franks, bro couldn't rest. His enemies were stepping everywhere, like the Saxons I have mentioned earlier in Germany. They were next. Now, the Saxons were tough warriors. They didn't believe in Charlemagne's god, and Charlemagne and the Saxons didn't like each other. As you could presume, they're ops. And not only were they enemies, they specifically did things that Charlemagne didn't approve of, sorry. They did a bunch of things that Charlemagne didn't like and actually hated. Like, for example, they hurt people, they stole food, they burned down churches, and Charlemagne, as you can presume, Christian empire, he didn't like this. And you just know Charlemagne, he starts stepping on them. He just starts stepping on them. Just starts whooping crazy butts. He burned down their villages, he took their leaders, and he ended up just doing harm to these people. Not only that, he straight up just beat them down, like, think of, like, defeat, but, like, times 10. And Charlemagne would leave, but then the Saxons would start fighting back, and then he'd always have to come back to fight them again. So Charlemagne was like, okay, you know what? Convert to Christianity, or I'm sending all of you to Jesus. And as you could presume, none of them converted, and they all ended up getting smoked brutally. This was known as the massacre at Verdun, which resulted in the passings. I gotta say passings because I can't actually say the real thing. The passings of 4,500 Saxons of Germany. But then after that, the Saxons were too afraid to fight. Like, they weren't stepping on Charlemagne at all. And bro, with the Saxons crushed, Charlemagne is now, like, ruling the north. But no, your boy wanted more. He's probably gonna bite him. Now, in Spain were the Moors. Now, the Moors were powerful Muslim Islam leaders. And they thought, and they ruled a part of the land that Charlemagne actually wanted to take for himself. And then, Charlemagne starts stepping to Spain, and he takes his knights onto a mountain called the Pyrenees Mountains, and the Moors were actually nervous because they had heard of who Charlemagne was. And after a heartfelt match between two emperors, Charlemagne retreated. Yeah, that happened. And then they tried, like, going home, but Charlemagne's his army got ambushed, and now bro's trapped, and he has nowhere to go. But this is where Roland comes in. You're about to hear homie Roland. And then one of Charlemagne's most bravest knights, Roland, he's like, yo, bro, go, master. I got it. I'm gonna stand behind. Me and my men are trying to fight them to the death! And that's exactly what they did. They laid down their lives for their god and their emperor. His story would become legendary. But we're not talking about Roland. We're talking about Charlemagne. And as you could presume, what's his name? Charlemagne was deeply grieved by his homie Roland. bro had laid down his life for him, and he was, rightly so, he was upset. He was like, oh man, I miss my homie Roland. This sucks. But the amount of land Charlemagne had control over was too much to handle for one man. He needed to find a way to control all of the land. And then Charlemagne split his empire into little divided sections, and he called them counties, and they were not ruled, but they were controlled by counts, and counts basically collected taxes and basically followed Charlemagne's laws. And Charlemagne actually sent spies named Missi Dominici to, spy on the counts to make sure they were actually obeying Charlemagne. And you also got to think, instead of ruling in one place, Charlemagne traveled all around his empire because he wanted his people to see him, and he wanted them to respect him, and he wanted them to know that he was him. And even though Charlemagne did care about being a warrior, he also loved learning, and he brought the smartest people from all of Europe to teach him and to help him learn, think, and basically stuff like that. This part just shows that Charlemagne wasn't a bloodthirsty warrior, and he didn't just like smoking people. He actually used his brain, and he was smart on how he did things. He was actually so smart that he built an entire palace, a school, and it was just to help people learn. And he brought noble boys to these schools so they could learn to be rightful rulers when Charlemagne's, time had come. Oh, I forgot to cut the video. And believe it or not, Charlemagne couldn't write at all. He had tried every night before bed to write, but his hands were so gruff and rough and big from fighting people. And Charlemagne's And Charlemagne's scholars actually made a new way of helping Charlemagne write. They basically came up with a new way to write, learn, and stuff like that, and it made books easier to read. I don't know why it incorporated that, they just did. During this time, a lot of books that had a lot of knowledge in them were getting either destroyed or lost, and then Charlemagne had told his scholars to actually make copies of these books so knowledge wouldn't be forgotten. Yeah. And not only that, Charlemagne was deeply religious. He believed that God had chosen him to run this empire. Not only that, he also told people to... Oh my goodness, what's wrong with me, bro? He also told his people to follow Christian laws, and basically, we have another Constantine the Great, except he was I don't know what I'm trying to say. And so Charlemagne actually wrote new laws and stuff like that, so his empire could remain peaceful and fair. And if you disobeyed one of these laws, you'd be punished. And then they had something known as the slap test. Basically, someone would put their hand, if someone had committed a crime or violated a law, they would put their hand in boiling hot water, and if they took it out, it healed quickly. That means they weren't guilty. If it didn't heal as quickly, that means they were guilty. But Charlemagne had never stopped fighting. He had, become greater than any other king before him. His empire got really big, and he became really massive, and it was just amazing. But the Pope had a very weird plan, and this plan would change history. You see, the Pope had been watching Charlemagne really close, and he had a plan that would quite literally change history. On Christmas Day in the year 800, Charlemagne actually went to the church of, a church of Rome, and he knelt down of the Pope, and the Pope placed a crown on top of his head, and he said, "Long live Charlemagne, the Emperor, whatever!" He said, "Long live Charlemagne, Emperor of the Romans." Now, Charlemagne wasn't just a king. He was an emperor now. Meaning, he had become the most powerful emperor in, Europe itself. And, with great power comes great enemies. Yeah, you thought I was about to say with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, I know. You thought I was finna say that or not. And you just think I'm weird. And you gotta think, Charlemagne's empire was huge. It was massive. And you gotta think, as it became more massive, there was enemies everywhere. And a lot of people, and you know how enemies work. They want to hurt you, and they want to do bad things to you. And even though the Charlemagne had beaten the Saxons, the people I had mentioned previously, they still did not like Charlemagne. They burned down places, and they did not follow his laws or God's laws. They just didn't like Charlemagne. And then one last time, Charlemagne steps on these people, and he smokes all of, not all of them, but he, like, does real bad damage, and he's like, convert to Christianity, or I'm sending you to Jesus! Yeah, and the Saxons never rebelled again. And the Avars were actually fierce warriors from the east, and they had a bunch of gold, but, you know, and Charlemagne, being Charlemagne, he wanted that gold, and you know how this is gonna go. Basically, Charlemagne slides on them, smokes all of them. It was a long, bloody battle, but the Franks won, which, you know, was a people he ruled. And, yeah, he became, like, not only was he now the most powerful dude in all of Europe, but he was rich. Paper, like, he had money. His pockets were heavy. He literally struggled to walk. And, you know, Charlemagne had already fought the Moors. If you don't know who the Moors are, I mentioned them previously in the video. They're powerful Islamic leaders. And even though Charlemagne had defeated them before, they had kept coming back to, like, start new wars, and, you know, it was a big problem for Charlemagne. His soldiers had to fight again and again and again to even remain control of the entire thing. And, you know, sooner or later, Charlemagne starts seeing some people pull up in strange-looking ships, and they had dragon heads, and these were tall warriors, and they had axes, and these were called Vikings. Yeah! We're talking about Vikings! Let's go! So Vikings pull up on Charlemagne, and Charlemagne's like, oh my goodness, man, what the... And you gotta think, Charlemagne actually saw these people and was like, oh, okay, these people could be actual threats. So he ordered more soldiers, more defense, and, like, watchtowers across the coast. And the Vikings were tough, but Charlemagne's empire was way tougher. And you gotta think, Charlemagne had been fighting his entire life. Like, his hair was growing really white. He was getting really old, his body was weak, and he wasn't going to be around forever. Charlemagne had many sons, but one of his favorites, or, you know, his favorite, was a boy named Louis, which, you know, was his son. And he actually wanted Louis to rule after him, but his other sons were not happy with that. And Charlemagne knew after he passed that, you know, his empire was going to fall apart, so he had to come up with a plan to keep it all together when he went away. And even though Charlemagne was, like, the most powerful man in the world at the time, he didn't really, like, live in luxury. Like, he lived simply. Like, he wore plain clothes. He, like, ate simply. And he was just a chill dude. And he spent most of his time learning stuff. Like, he was just... Charlemagne is, like, a prime example of what every empire/leader should have been. Not only was Charlemagne the most powerful man in the entire world at the time, but he was just humble. He not even humble, he just liked doing these things. And even in Charlemagne's old age, he still had one last war to fight against the Vikings. And, you know, he was still old, but he still did it. So he slides on them one last time. And then he got sick, but his body was too weak to actually fight it off. So, you know, Charlemagne the Great. In the year of 1814, Charlemagne got sick, and his body was too beaten up and too wrecked to fight it off. So, you know, Charlemagne was passing away. And then, you know, he had called his son Louis. He's like, Louis, you're gonna, like, rule wisely, my son. And then on January 28th of 1814, Charlemagne closed his eyes forever. His body was placed in a great tomb in Action. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, but I probably am. The people had been mourning the greatest leader they had ever had. Like, ever. Charlemagne had ruled the greatest empire and the strongest empire in Europe. But without him, what would happen next? But yeah, guys, that was the video. I just thought I might just get on here and just, you know, make another video, you know, post consistently, you know. But yeah, I thought I might talk about Charlemagne for a second, because dude was a humble and one of the most greatest kings ever. He was also, you know, he was Christian, so that played a big role in it too. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for clicking on the video. But yeah, we're about to hit 50,000 subscribers very soon. So if you don't mind, please like, comment, and subscribe, because these videos actually take a long time to actually make. But yeah, I feel like that's it. I thank you, I love you, and God bless.